And welcome to the Sportsgrad Podcast, your bite-sized guide to enter the sports industry. And with me, as always, is the conditioned Ruben Williams. How are you, mate?
G'day, Ryan. I'm fantastic. Thank you. I'm feeling very well conditioned to doing this podcast with you now. We've been doing it for a while. It wasn't so great when we started out, but we've made our way to where we are right now. So, yes, conditioned is how I feel in a podcast sense, if that's what you're referring to.
If there was a strength and conditioning coach for podcasters, I don't think we'd need one anymore. We probably needed them from day dot, but we've done over 160 episodes now. So I guess we are pretty conditioned.
Yeah, the voice is starting to get a little bit stronger.
You speak with quite conviction now. Like it's great. You know, you're used to it. So looking forward to this episode today. So let's jump in.
Yes, absolutely. But first, if you want to learn more about who we are, feel free to ask us any questions or connect with us on LinkedIn and jump into the community. It's a great space to chat with us, chat with other members of the sports industry. Tomorrow, in fact, we have a fantastic speed networking event coming up. And then the following week, we have got another job fair where people such as Golf Australia, Netball Australia, all those big organisations come along and pitch their jobs to you. You get the chance to ask any questions you like and then see what comes from it from there. So if you want to get involved, head to the link in our show notes to check out the Sportsgrad community. There really is something for everyone inside, no matter if you're trying to hire people or trying to get your foot in the door or just learn from the best in the world.
Awesome. We'll start today's ep with a quick tip to get a job in sport. If you're currently studying or you've just finished studying, having a postgrad qualification in sports management on your resume can give you a huge leg up over other potential candidates applying for the same role. So if you want to pump up your resume and get specialised knowledge in all areas of sport, take a look at Deacon's postgrad qualification. Their Master of Business in Sports Management is not one of, but the best one in Australia, ranked at number 1. So hurry along and get into that. Add a postgrad to your resume. Sorry, I was about to say community because we're so big on our community. Add a postgrad to your resume, and that's our tip for the episode.
Ryan, today you mentioned you're very excited for this one with chatting with Steve Moore, strength and conditioning coach of the Carlton Football Club. He is a phenomenal guy, just very well spoken, very practical in his application to kind of help people understand what it takes to get into S&C. And he just gave us an incredible overview of what it takes to be an S&C coach in the AFL and some of the wide-ranging skill sets that you need in a post-COVID world. You'll hear him talk about a bit later on, but the strength and conditioning world is changing. Yep. So look forward to that because there's a fair bit to it, Ryan.
Yeah, you also hear about what it's like to work in a high-performance environment. I feel like it's a bit of a buzzword these days. You know, we're a high-performing organisation, but when you work in the AFL and at the Carlton Footy Club, there is literally no bigger sort of environment that is high performing. So hear what that's like. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. I just loved hearing how Steve is kind of getting dragged along with the incredible individuals who are inside it and the impact that they're having on the people around them. And then finally, it's not all red roses at a footy club. It does come with a whole lot of stress because there is a whole lot of pressure on field. So hearing Steve talk about how that impacts him in his role, because you often hear about how it impacts players and coaches and other staff, but hearing how Steve, as a strength and conditioning coach, deals with the pressure of on-field success, wins and losses, that kind of thing, was really fascinating too. So some really good things to be mindful of if you are considering a career in strength and conditioning.
Absolutely. Well, we'll jump into it. Grab a pen. Enjoy this chat with Steve Moore. Steve, welcome to the Sportsgrad podcast.
Thanks, Ryan and Ruben. Thanks for having me on today. Really looking forward to a bit of a chat.
Our pleasure, mate. Well, footy's back. The Blues and the Tigers have got their traditional opening round Thursday night slot this week. What are you looking forward to most?
I think just footy. I mean, I suppose the AFL season being back and having fans at the games again. I think as a fan, myself, we've had a great AFLW season this year, being able to get through pretty COVID free in a way, and we've had sort of a few interruptions here and there, but having the men's season back as well is super exciting, and really exciting year for the Blues, hopefully.
Steve, you mentioned then you're a fan. Now, I've heard on good record that you're actually a Pies fan. How does that work, working for Carlton, arch rivals with the Pies?
Yeah, it's a little bit mad Collingwood growing up and things like that, and still get to pretty much most of the games on a weekly basis when I can with a couple of mates. And it did test the colours a bit the first time I put the polo on, and was a bit of a challenge and took a little bit of getting used to. But I suppose one of the great things about sport is that you do get to, I suppose, you need to put those rivalries aside at times and be able to, you don't always get to choose the colours that you get to work in and your favourite club and things like that. But Carlton's been great for me, and definitely softened towards the blue and white, that's for sure, over the last couple of years.
Well, mate, you're now in one of the most enviable jobs in Australia, being strength and conditioning coach of the Carlton Footy Club. But it might not have always been this way. We're going to start off by kind of diving in to one of the more critical career decisions that you had to make early on, and that was to withdraw from your Masters of Teaching and go all in on a career in strength and conditioning. I'm wondering, what sort of things did you do to make that call, and what factors did you consider? Yeah,
well, teaching was always a bit of a passion of mine, and still is a passion of mine. It was sort of what I wanted to do when I finished high school, and I suppose things didn't always pan out the way I suppose I wanted them to in regards to my career early days, and going down the exercise science pathway. I didn't really know what I was getting myself into at times with my university, and it took a little bit of time for me to sort of develop a bit of a passion for it. And, strength and conditioning did become quickly a passion of mine and something I did want to pursue. But early days, and this is what a lot of coaches are experiencing and will experience, is that it's tough yakka trying to get these roles that pay well enough to be able to live and pursue it as a career. And I suppose it was around about that 2017, 2018 period where I was just had finished uni, and I wasn't sure whether the fitness industry was going to be sustainable enough for me to be able to live off in a way. I still definitely wanted to do S&C, but teaching, I looked at it as an opportunity to be able to go back to uni, do some studies, and then get a role that had the stability of the day by day, and then potentially be able to do some S&C, say out of hours, working with the club after work or on the weekends or whatever it may be. So, I gave my Masters of Teaching a good old crack for 6 months, and was progressing through that. But I sort of got to the midway through that first year and sort of sat down with my partner and was chatting about it, and I just wasn't enjoying it as much as I thought I would. And I wasn't ready to sort of give up on the S&C pathway itself. So at the time, I sort of decided I was doing personal training on the side as well, and did that for 6 years and kept the money coming in and was able to live off that, and then really decided just to go all in on the S&C thing and really try and make it work. And sitting here 4 years later, I'm pretty happy that that's what happened and that I made that decision. So that was the turning point.
I went through a sports science degree when I was back at Deakin, and I've seen a number of other people go through sports science and end up in teaching or end up in administration and falling out of it. For you to continue and persevere through it and end up in the job that you are, does it just take a whole lot of self-belief to kind of get yourself to that point, or what sort of things allowed you to reach where you are now?
Self-belief was probably one thing, and it was almost probably the people around me that were driving that belief more than anything, because there was probably a lot of self-doubt from my end, and there has been at different stages throughout that journey. But as I said, like the people that have been around me over that journey, and my managers, family, all that sort of stuff that have supported me, friends that have sort of kept me on the right path and kept, I suppose, telling me that it's working out, and they can see the bigger picture, where it's quite often, you can sort of get lost and get quite caught up in what you're doing, and you don't feel as though you're making those progressions. But on the outside, you are really progressing well and in a good position. So being able to self-reflect was one thing as well that I suppose I did learn a little bit later down the track. At the time, I was probably a bit young and naive and wasn't able to do that. But yeah, to be able to have that support network around me and those people to lean on really allowed me to keep pursuing what I was doing and keep ensuring me that I was on the right path.
Awesome. I love those sliding doors moments. I love Ruben's, flipping from that. But you've got a similar story. It's great to see those big decisions really paying off. When people think about strength and conditioning coaching at an AFL club, they probably typically think it's just helping athletes lift weights and do all those kind of things. However, your role encompasses a variety of responsibilities. Can you talk to the nature of your job and what you sort of do day to day?
Yeah, my job's pretty unique in a sense of an S&C coach and of what you'd probably view an S&C coach being in an AFL club or an elite sport environment, as you kind of think it's going to be just working, say, with one team and the same players day in, day out. But I'm quite fortunate that my role, there's no 2 days that are the same, really, throughout my week. It's a bit all-encompassing in a way. I work across the whole club here at Carlton. I work within the AFL, the men's team as an assistant strength and conditioning coach. I oversee the AFLW strength and conditioning environment. And then outside of that as well, we have the Carlton College of Sport here and our academy systems as well, which I sort of lead up their athletic performance and high performance departments as well as that. And then a bit of teaching as well. So within the Carlton College of Sport, within their diploma, they have a strength and conditioning unit. So I get to sort of drawing back on your previous question there, talking about that sliding doors moment. Here we are 4 years later, and I am still doing a bit of teaching 1 day a week within that program. So as you can see, it sounds like a lot, in regards to what's wrapped up into that role, but it's quite seasonal. They're not sort of, this is probably the only time of the year where all those roles are actually up in the air and trying to work through all them. But it really does provide a lot of variety within my week and keeps it quite fun and interesting all year round.
You mentioned your role is quite unique compared to other AFL clubs out there. How did COVID impact the nature of your position?
Yeah, I was probably one of the few beneficiaries of the whole COVID situation. I know, unfortunately, a lot of coaches and a lot of staff members have gone through some pretty tough times in regards to losing jobs or having reduced hours and things like that. But at the time, I was only part-time at the club. And sort of on the back end of COVID, once I suppose things started to stabilise a little bit, I know we're still obviously fighting through it, but towards the end of the middle of last year and everything like that, things started to stabilise a little bit more, and those resources were probably a lot of the staff that had worked through those couple of years were really stretched. So the club was sort of looking to, help ease a bit of that pain and start to bring some more staff members back on. And I suppose having myself around the place on a part-time capacity, and probably 3 days a week at that stage, there was scope for me to sort of come on full-time and work across a few programs and, I suppose help ease the pain. But then at the same time, it was a win-win situation because I was getting exactly what I was dreaming of as a full-time role in elite sport. I've been able to sort of keep moving forward the way we have over the last 6 to 8 months.
It's really interesting hearing how football clubs and sporting organisations have had to adapt and kind of piece positions together due to all the funding that's kind of been lost during that period. Do you think this is going to be an ongoing, do you think more roles like this that encompass a variety of different things are going to become more common across the AFL industry?
Yeah, I think so. I think being able to reward a lot of staff members that may be working on a part-time or a contract basis, a subcontract basis, to come on in a full-time capacity or more of a permanent capacity is a great way to not only reward those staff, but you've got people who already know the organisation. I think particularly looking at AFLW, we've got some unbelievable staff that work in that program. But at the same time, they're going off exactly as the way the players are. They're working, studying, doing everything else during the day. Is there scope rather than going out and recruiting, say, specialist staff in particular roles to get them to come and work across programs? And what I really found and sort of a bit of an angle that I took in working with the club and coming full time was being a bit of a conduit between programs as well. For so long in this situation with everything's had to be separated. There's no crossover between programs. Staff are working from home. Staff from different programs don't know each other. Players don't know each other. All this sort of stuff. So it was really something that I thought that I could help with the club. Was we just got a brand new facility that's gone in and it's still being built. But it was a great opportunity to go, bring the AFLW and the AFL program together, bring the academy together, bring Carlton College, and start to loop all these programs together and start to become what I suppose our vision is to be as one club and one program all the way across.
That's fantastic. I think it's super important that people kind of look at their career as being able to piece a number of different skill sets together, because with the way the industry is going, they've got to be able to kind of scale up and scale down at different points in time, and no longer of some full-time resources required all year round in full-time capacities. So being able to kind of be adaptable as you have been, it becomes really important if you want to be able to, fill out your week at the one place, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. I think for me, particularly, I found like I was juggling a couple of roles at the time, and, just being under one roof and parking the car in the morning and knowing that you don't need to jump in and shoot off to a client after you've finished your 5 or 6 hours at the club or however long you may be here, and worrying about, logistics of traffic and all that sort of stuff, being under one roof, but then being able to work within those programs definitely relieves a lot of stress and makes it a lot easier to do your job a lot better.
Yeah, absolutely. If you were to look at how committed everyone in a company is to reach a common goal and achieve success, AFL clubs are, at the extreme end in comparison to your everyday workplace. So what's it like working inside an AFL footy club, and how does the environment motivate you to be better at what you do?
Yeah, it's pretty full on. As you said, like it's always fast paced and stressful at times because there is a lot riding on different things, whether it's success or results or financials or like you look at the common day high performance programs and clubs, they're businesses and they're there to perform and on-field results, but then also off-field. Like we hear it every year in the media from the financial status of the club or how they're performing and everything like that. So, it's really motivating because it keeps you on task. But I think it's hard not to be motivated when you're surrounded by like-minded individuals who are chasing the same goal, whether that is to get the athletes better, to make the club a better place, to make themselves better. It's team sport environments, like they're very addictive, I find. For someone who's grown up playing team sport and loves winning and loves competing and doing all that sort of stuff, it's hard not to want to keep bettering yourself. And, you're away from work and all right, what's next? How can I get better? What professional development can I do? What chinks in up my armour do I have that I need to get better at, that I can make myself a better coach to therefore make the athlete better, to make the club a better place. And then hopefully you're a very small piece of the puzzle in the grand scheme of things, but still very important at the same time in regards to, if you're not pursuing and getting better day to day, you'll get spat out pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Is what I think. So, yeah.
Are there any any individuals in particular that are having an effect that have rubbed off on you, whether it's, like Michael Voss is a former Brownlow medalist. I'm sure Chris Judd waltzes in there every now and again. You've got some incredible people that walk through the doors at Carlton. Is there anyone in particular that you've noticed or that said anything in particular that's rubbed off on you?
I think the big thing around the club is that there's some great leaders here, and you don't necessarily have to have the titles all the time of being the leader, and it's a bit cliche in a way, but it's so true, because you just look at the way that different athletes treat the place or treat staff members or keep driving the place forward. Sam Walsh is one who obviously look at work ethic and what goes into someone like his preparation and everything like that off the field. There's no surprise why they're so successful on the field. And it's the same with players like Karen Harrington in the AFLW program as the captain. Like, leadership is just like second to none in the way she prepares and goes about it and leads the place and does all the little things right. So there's no surprise why these players and these athletes are so successful. And the same thing goes for staff members and coaches and things like that. So it's not so much probably what has been said, but it's more, I suppose, driven by their actions around the place, because there is a lot of talk that can go on within programs and a lot of preaching about different things. But when these actions are put in place and you see these players doing it and the staff members and the other players look at it and they quickly follow, because they know that's the standard that we're going to live up to and drive forward.
What are some of the little things that you witness day to day that kind of make you feel lucky to be in the job you are?
I think just that, the connection, the connection of the club is something that we're focused a lot on. And I spoke about it before, by being able to connect across programs and to be able to, in my role, I'm so lucky to be able to get to work with and get to know so many different people from not only the athletes' perspective, but the students within our college and our staff members, to get to know these people on more of a deeper level and build that trust and that connection and these relationships is really, really, really cool, to be honest. I think it's you form some great friendships and some great relationships. And I mean, whilst high performance sport is an environment that there's high turnover, people were always moving on to bigger and better things, or the landscape's always constantly changing. But to be able to still come across a lot of these networks and connections and even be able to look at that down the track, how is that playing a role in your career? It is. We know how small the sports industry is at times. So everyone kind of knows everyone once you get to a certain point, and being able to draw upon these people at different times and bounce ideas off them and do all these different things is really, really cool and important.
Is Andrew Russell still at Carlton?
Yeah, Andrew Russell. Yeah, he's the director of high performance here still. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I know a lot about him because I'm a massive Hawthorn supporter, and he was there during the great Hawthorn era where they won 3 premierships in a row. I can talk about that for a while, but
it's weird. Like, you never mention the 3 days. It's weird. It's unusual for him to mention it. I'm not sure the listeners as well. I don't know if you knew Brendan was a Hawthorn fan, but apparently Hawthorn won 3 in a row once. So yeah, enlightening. Thank you, mate.
Anyway, Andrew Russell had an incredible part to play in that success. Are there certain things that you've learnt from him?
Yeah, Jack's a phenomenal operator. Like, to be able to watch the way he goes about it on a day-to-day basis, and you just look at purely his work ethic for someone who's been, involved in the industry for such a long time and been so successful, to see the drive that he works with and the way that he just has an idea of everything that's going on. Like, he's just over it all. Like, the work ethic is phenomenal, as I said, but being able to connect with the players and know what works for each player. When you're trying to juggle 44, 45 players on a list, like, it's a really tough job. So, just being able to observe the way, I suppose, not only he manages the players himself, but then the staff members that he works with as well is really cool to watch day in, day out.
I'm going to put you on the spot real quick. Is there one bit of feedback you recall receiving from Andrew?
Not too much just yet. As I said, like, I've only sort of been within the AFL program for this pre-season so far. So I'm sure that'll come along pretty soon at some stage. But I think just, when I sort of came into this program, he was just Jack's just about kind of being all in and giving the players your all and making sure that you're present and coaching and being seen on the gym floor and just being an active learner as much as anything. So, yeah, I'm sure the feedback will come at some stage.
You mentioned just then, there's 44 players on a men's list. Is it the same amount on a AFLW list as well?
We have 30 players
30.
as of this season, plus a few train-ons.
Yeah. So
like the whole COVID situation, but I think that it's going to expand.
Yeah.
Depending on what the current what the CBA looks like once it's sorted out.
Yeah, awesome. One thing that amazes me is, from a strength and conditioning point of view, how you connect with that many players on a personal level. Is there a way that you've kind of done that in your time so far to try and, get them to trust you really quickly? Because really, you don't have a lot of time before you really need to get to work. So is there anything in particular that you've done to make sure that you can connect with them on that personal level?
It's pretty much impossible to connect with those 45 players or 30 players on a list, all on the same level.
Yeah.
It's just like anything. Like, you're going to get on with some people more than others and have different things in common. But, just trying to get to being genuine as well is really important. Being able to, know more about the athlete rather than just, how much they squat or how they move and all this sort of stuff. Like, getting to actually know about their families and what they're doing on the weekend and what interests them outside of football. If you're able to show that compassion and a bit of empathy and these different types of skills, you can break down the barriers pretty quickly and build a bit of trust. And all of a sudden, as you get to know them and work with them a little bit longer, hopefully those relationships start to blossom a little bit more. And the biggest thing is about trying to get the players to trust you and feel comfortable, even if they don't necessarily you get on with that athlete as well as another coach may. As I said, everyone's going to have different personalities and connect differently with different people. So being able to just build that trust, and particularly if you are in charge of, say, running a program or writing or running an S&C component, like I am with the AFLW program, it's important that you've got that buy-in. And it's a slow process at times. Like, it's been a bit of work over 4 years to get these players to trust what we do, because not everyone likes the gym. And not everyone believes in what you're doing, but through the role of education and actually educating these athletes on the why we're doing these exercises, or why it's important they come in and make sure they do their gym program when it's 9:30 at night and they want to go home and they're hungry and tired and all this sort of stuff. Hopefully, they can see the results and they can see the understanding of what you're trying to do and buy into it that way. And it's become second nature.
There's some very interesting similarities between what you're trying to achieve in getting buy-in from an athlete and a topic that we spoke to Kip Kaufman from Oz Cycling about the other week. In Kip's case, he's trying to merge 18 cycling organisations into one unified governing body and trying to get everyone on board and bring everyone on the journey to kind of realise this vision for cycling. In your case, you're trying to get buy-in from an athlete so that they can be the best possible player that they can be. But fundamentally, underneath it, they're very similar steps. You're kind of setting this vision for what you want your athlete to be like and communicating it to them the whole way through so they understand and buy into what you're trying to achieve. Same with Kip. He's got an incredible amount of stakeholders to deal with. You're dealing with one athlete at a time in a group of 40 odd. But it's very interesting to notice how no matter what your role is or what the scale of it is, there's some fundamental similarities into achieving success.
Yeah, definitely. I think even, I suppose, just what you're talking about there is something like we had our first intake yesterday for Carlton College with our students this year, and it was something that I spoke about with them, and we were talking about the fitness component and strength and conditioning as a profession. And something I always refer back to with them is, even if you don't have an interest in this area of what we're talking about, all these skill sets and all these practices that we're putting in play are so important no matter what profession you go into. So being able to work with a number of different stakeholders and those communication strategies and, just being a good person at the end of the day can carry over no matter where you want to go with your career.
Yeah,
absolutely. Steve, we like to kind of show a well-rounded picture of what jobs in sport are like. We've touched on some of the great sides of your role and some of the incredible things you are privy to. On the contrary, what are some of the more stressful things? In particular, we know high performance places a lot of emphasis on wins and losses. Does that sort of pressure reach staff such as yourself?
I think when you do step into these high performance environments, it's pretty hard not to get caught up in the wins and losses. Like you ride the highs and lows with these athletes day in, day out. And I think one of the biggest stresses is, okay, well, how after a loss and when we come back in on a Monday or a Tuesday, are we getting these players and these athletes up to go again? And that's your role when they've had a bad loss or they've had a bad performance, and the psychology behind all that. What can you do as a coach to be, as I said before, empathetic about what's going on, but also realign their focus into the next game or the next week and the next processes that we're trying to put in play, and be able to, compartmentalize and put things aside and focus on what's coming next. So being able to do that, because again, every athlete and every program is going to react differently to those wins and losses. Some athletes are a lot better at getting over it in a sense. But then also at the same time, on the other end of the scale is, after having a good win, not getting carried away and making sure that the athlete again can refocus. So always coming back to that middle ground and being able to keep them on the straight and narrow is pretty tough. But from a stress point of view, I suppose, as we said before, like there is a lot that goes on within my role. And I suppose the biggest stress for me is probably, making sure that the balance is right between each of those roles and not neglecting one component or going too far down the rabbit hole with another one. But also at the same time, I think something that I struggle to do is say no at times. Like I always just want to take it all on and say yes to everything, and not feeling like there's enough time in the day at times can be quite stressful. So it's managing that as well.
Is that workload something you have to manage yourself, or is there someone else above you who says, all right, Steve, you're going to be doing these 4 things throughout the week, and this is how your time is going to be separated, or is that left up to you?
There's a little bit of both for me. Like I work pretty closely with my managers across each program to make sure that I'm managing my time, but then also at the same time, it's quite autonomous for me to be able to, say no to, or when I'm working from home or having a morning off. Like the nature of AFLW at the moment is there is some late nights where we are getting home from training after 10:30 at night, and then to be able to balance the week out in the best way possible, so I'm not back at the club at 7 a.m. the next morning every single day, and draining those days out, because then obviously as the weeks and the seasons goes on, then my work quality and standards are going to drop. So being able to work closely and admit when things are getting a little bit tough is a definitely important thing around here for me to do. Drawing upon my managers, they're well and truly all over telling me when to take a break or helping me to take leave and things like that.
Is that something you've had to work on? Because I can imagine, like, even speaking from my own experience starting my career at Cricket Australia, I would have just been like you, as you said, just say yes to everything, and probably would have been too afraid to push back and say no. So is that something you've had to develop?
Oh, absolutely. I think that whole FOMO component hits me pretty hard. Like, you get offered an opportunity to help out with something, and you're like, oh, if I say no to that, how's that going to reflect on potential future opportunities? Are they not going to come to me? Or am I going to miss out on something really cool within that program or that opportunity itself? But I think, being able to admit, like, to be able to use no as a full sentence is a pretty important thing. And hopefully the people that you're working with and the staff members that are asking you to participate or help out with that opportunity can understand and respect you as a staff member at that time.
I remember the early years of Cricket Australia, I was just like going around to every single department, almost like just willingly throwing my hand out, being like, hey, how can I help the strategy team? How can I help the community cricket team? That's how Ryan and I became good friends, because I stepped out of my role a bit and thought, I want to hang out down here for a bit.
Just walk down to the office half the time.
Yeah, so I had to be riled in a bit.
There's a bit of that culture though when you jump into an organisation. It's like people always say, just say yes to everything. And it's like, well, okay, I could do that, but how's that actually going to work? Like, it's good advice to, go and get a taste of everything, but at the end of the day, it's actually not possible. So I like what you said there, Steve, around just being able to use no as a full sentence. I think that's a good term. But at the end of the day, you can't do everything. You can do as much as you possibly can, but you're right. You don't want to be getting home at 11 a.m. and getting in at 6:30 and, you're right, the standards are going to drop. So,
yeah, I think I can't take credit for that. No as a full sentence. That's my partner Hannah. That's her. That's that ringing in my head every time because that I say that I'm not that I've taken on this or I've taken on that. And she's like,
nice.
Yeah, how are you going to balance that? So I won't take credit for that.
Nice. We'll give Hannah credit, but
yeah, absolutely.
We'll use that going forward. I think it's a good one.
I really like that.
Yeah,
no as a full sentence.
I like it.
I'll write that down.
Steve, one thing you're big on is being a generalist rather than a specialist. What do these mean in a strength and conditioning sense, and why should you strive to be a generalist?
Yeah, I think one thing that COVID probably has taught us, or definitely taught me, is the importance of having quite a broad skill set. We just spoke about saying yes to all those opportunities in different departments and wanting to take it all on. But there's part to it as well that is highly beneficial. Being able to, from increasing an employment point of view, like again, we went talk back about what my role looks like on a week-to-week basis. And there's all those different roles within the role that wouldn't be possible if I only feel as though I had one skill set or went down the rabbit hole of having one skill set. And what I mean by that is, say from a strength and conditioning or high performance setting, clubs aren't necessarily hiring people to do one thing at the moment. So what I mean by that is, whether it's a speed coach or someone in particular just to do boxing or whatever a certain component may be. What you're better off looking at doing is broadening that skill set as best you can as a young coach, because you're a lot more hireable in a way to those clubs, because they're going to go, all right, this person, we can bring them on, pay them a full-time wage, but they can do X, Y, and Z from a coaching perspective, and you're a lot more valuable to an organisation in that sense, rather than having to put on 3 to 4 contractors or 3 to 4 people in a part-time capacity when money is a bit tight and restricted through soft caps and salary caps at the moment. So being able to diversify as much as you can and be able to look at different opportunities across the club, not only within one program, how can you assist or how can you be beneficial and be a win-win situation for both you and the organisation that you're working for is really important.
Yeah, nice.
I think that's great advice. Like, I think so many people get caught up in like, I have to be the best in my field. I have to do this one specific thing. But then you can cut yourself out in so many different areas. And as you say, like the nature of the industry is changing. So you have to change with it.
Yeah, of course. And I think particularly not only at the elite level, it's probably more relevant at the sub-elite and local levels, and for people who are at university studying at the moment or have just recently graduated. If you're working with your local sports team and you're coaching or you're a sports trainer or something like that, but you've got a level 1 ASCA accreditation that you can say to the coach, hey, or the general manager, hey, I'm qualified in this. How about me running a warm-up or running some gym sessions or a boxing session for pre-season? All of a sudden, you can go and ask for a bit more money, or you can get yourself a few more hours a week of employment, helps ease the burden, gets you a bit of skin in the game for you as a worker, and be able to develop your skills. And at the end of the day, builds out your resume. You're a lot more enticing when you start going for those roles higher up the chain.
You reminded me of one of our former guests, Gavin Marnie, episode 30. He's now a facilitator at leading teams, but one of his earliest experiences was being the strength and conditioning coach at his local football club. And this was a title that he gave himself because he literally just did what you explained, and that was put his hand up to take the warm-ups. And he said to us, I looked at the team and thought, we can be doing this better here, so I'm going to step in and try and use this space to get some experience at the same time, and was able to leverage that to other opportunities.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's the best way to go about it, because as we've spoken about before, those opportunities can be quite hard to come by, particularly from a remuneration point of view. But if you can expand on that skill set and almost add value to a club and go to them and say, this is how I can make you or your club or your players better, straight away you've got a bit of leverage to work off there and be able to, as I said, make a little bit more money or get yourself a bit more employment throughout the week and do what you want to do.
And particularly if you're a first or second year student, those are the most accessible opportunities you can find. Like, you don't need to apply. Half the time you just step in and put your hand up.
Yeah. Definitely, yeah. Once you get your foot in the door with those opportunities, and I suppose it's up to you once you're in that position to make of it what you want. You can sort of, particularly even things with internships, you can go in there and observe and take on all these great things that are going on, but are you better off looking at ways that you can improve that organisation and potentially make yourself more employable by the time that you finish, whether it's at the club that you're working at or therefore utilising those networks outside of that and being able to branch off of that, really makes it more enticing for that person to improve on their career.
Speaking of grassroots clubs, one thing that I've really admired about the footy clubs that I've been a part of is, how many strength and conditioning people are keen to, obviously help the club and do their bit for the club, but they want to build that pathway to get to, where you are today. What's some advice for those people out there right now who are just starting out, honing their craft, doing all that kind of thing, and how do they get to where you are today, and how does networking play a big role in that as well as just learning your stuff?
Absolutely. I think your networks are always going to be probably the most important part, particularly early in your career. As I said before, the sports industry is pretty small, and everyone knows everyone, or if there's a job that pops up and someone applies for it, most likely the person who's hiring will know someone who knows that person in a way. So, but I think just a bit of advice in that sense is trying to stay focused on what you're actually doing at that time and making that role that you're in the most important thing in the world at that time. So if you are working with your local sporting team, or you're doing an internship at a school, or you're running an Auskick clinic or whatever it may be, rather than thinking about, being the S&C coach within an AFL club or all these fancy jobs that we look at and dream of, not worrying about what that is 10 years, 5 years down the track, and trying to make that the most important thing in the world. Because if you do a really poor job with that local sporting team or running that Auskick clinic, well, then what chance have you got on progressing up the chain? And the people who are running that program, when you put them down as a reference on the next job that you go for, if that organisation rings them up and says, how did this person go running the warm-up at the local footy club? And, they were sort of half in, half out because they had their eyes on bigger and better things. It's going to count for nothing at the end of the day. And that elite job's only just going to get further and further away from you and reality.
I love that. Nice. I think that's such a good grounding piece of advice. Make whatever you're working on at the moment the most important thing that you do, and eventually you'll find your way up the ranks. Steve, finally, we want to end on a nice little high note with a bit of advice to share with the people listening. I want you to imagine that you're walking around the library of the Carlton College. I'm not sure if Carlton College have a library, but wherever you might find a student studying, and if you could leave a note on their desk for them to pick up, what would you leave on the note?
I think just being authentic is the biggest thing. It was just kind of leads nicely in from that previous question about networking and relationships. And I'm sure you guys get a fair bit of it, of people reaching out, and people want something all the time when they're reaching out. Well, not all the time, but a lot of the time when someone was reaching out, they're looking for a job or an opportunity right there and right then. Being able to be authentic and build those authentic relationships and not always have a bit of a hidden agenda about what you're doing when you're trying to connect with someone and build that network. You build those authentic relationships, that person's going to learn to like you, trust you, call upon you, that down the track, that's going to pay off a lot better than purely just connecting with someone on LinkedIn and saying, oh, do you know of any jobs going at your club, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because it's about being able to be a good person and be a good human first. And that's going to hold up along the way, and your skill set can come with that. But it's amazing how there's times where you look back and those people that have been authentic or genuine with you, they're the first people that pop to mind when you are looking to hire an intern or an assistant or a co-worker. So that would probably be the biggest thing for me, is just being authentic and building those relationships that you can call upon down the track, but not always having a hidden agenda.
I love that. It's a good note to finish on. Steve, it has been absolutely awesome to chat, mate. First of all, good luck in round one. Hoping the Blues can beat the Tigers. I think it's about time. The Blues get over them on round one. So good luck with that. But also, just hearing what you're talking about today, it's been great just to hear more about your role and, the world of strength and conditioning, because there's just so much knowledge in this area that people, really love to hear about, and just hearing your journey to get to where you are at Carlton and your day-to-day and how you manage all that is really great. So really appreciate you coming on the podcast, and good luck for a big season 2022.
Thank you, boys. Really appreciate it. Appreciate you having me on.
Well, Rubes, Steve is a superstar. How good was that?
I love that.
Great insight into his role at the Carlton Footy Club. A big year for that organisation coming up. A big game Thursday, I believe, against Richmond. So it was great to touch base with him before the season starts and just hear about his role. What are some things that kind of stood out to you?
Well, the number one thing that I learned is that in a post-COVID world where budgets have changed, the roles of a footy club and a footy department have changed, you can no longer just be a specialist. You really have to generalise and be a bit of a jack of all trades to kind of fill in the different roles here and there. And I loved what Steve said about how the industry is changing and people have got to be prepared to change with it. So if you're still coming up through the ranks and you think strength and conditioning is just what you want to do, great, go ahead, do your strength and conditioning internship, learn how to coach athletes, but then find some other things on the side that are going to help you round out your skill set as well, because as Steve says, you're going to be more hireable.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing you mentioned was how important networking is for strength and conditioning people and aspiring professionals wanting to get into the industry. I think some people might think that, the sports science, part of the industry is very much just skill based, and you do your degree, you get some experience, and then you're in. Not the case. Like he said, networking is just as important for sports management people than it is sports science. So get out there and chat to the people in the industry, because when you're early on in your career, it is so important to build that network.
Absolutely. And then finally, I loved what Steve said about just focusing on the here and now. The most important thing is what you're doing at this present moment. It's absolutely great that you've got these visions for your career and where you want to go in the future. Like, hold on to them. But the most important thing is that you do the best possible job in what you're working on right now. It doesn't matter if that's a local grassroots club with 22 players in one team, or you are working at the Carlton Football Club managing 4 different programs. Whatever you're doing right now, make that the most important thing, because that's how you get recognized and that's how you get to those aspirations you hold for yourself.
Awesome. What a chat with Steve. That was awesome. So we'll end it there. But find us on LinkedIn, plus be sure to jump into the Sports Grad community. We'd love to chat with you in there. Head to our website to join or head to the link in our show notes. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.